What is up, guys? This is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today is episode number 2 of Path to Perfection, the weekly series where I select a deck that I am personally running. We take a look at my main deck, extra deck, and side deck choices, and we have a little discussion about them for a couple of weeks at a time. So, this is week number 2 of Seraph Shaddolls and its coverage. So, really, over this past week, I have made a few changes to the deck, and really, it's a very theory-crafted deck that I was talking with one of my friends, and he mentioned some ideas for Shaddolls that were very, very interesting. So I guess you could say that I took his concepts and then just kind of threw it into this deck. As I will say this as a sort of disclaimer, this list that I currently have in front of you guys today is very, very preliminary. It is nowhere near any kind of finalized build that I would personally take to a regionals or something like that. It's really just a playtesting deck that I have made just to try some new elements out. And I just wanted to tell you guys that please understand that this is not a finalized list. But again, in lieu of this series, I'm just showing you guys basically the little updates that I have made to this deck over every week, I should say. So again, that's why I am showing it to you guys today. But again, just keep in mind, I'm going to say it quite a few times. Just keep in mind, this is very preliminary. So, enough of me rambling for this, what is it, minute 30 already that we've been into this video, and let's just get right into the deck profile that you guys all came to see. Okay, so we shall start with the Shaddolls this time. We have the Triple Beast, of course, because it gets us our draw power. He helps us dig through our deck as fast as we possibly can, so we have the 3 Beast. Following that, we have the 3 Falco, because Falco helps us keep board advantage all the time. Then we have the 2 Skomata, because Skomata essentially acts like an upstart goblin within this deck, as it can, it can constantly help us deck in our Shaddolls whenever it's into the grave. So it's basically like an upstart, and what upstart basically does for every other deck. So we do have the 2 Skomata. And then finally for the last 2 Shaddolls, we have the 2, not the 2. We have the 1 Hedgehog and the 1 Dragon, because they're just other Shaddoll names, and really, in my opinion, they're probably the most lackluster out of all the Shaddolls currently. But still, they do fairly well in their jobs that they need to do. So that is our Shaddoll lineup. I believe it is 10 Shaddolls that we do run. Moving on to the other things within this deck, we start with the Triple Star Seraph Scepter and the Triple Star Seraph Sovereignty. This is the Star Seraph engine, I guess you could say, or the thing that basically makes this deck run so well as it does right now. And we have to maximize on them just so we can keep getting our combos as soon as we can and getting our draw power as fast as we can. So this is the Star Seraph lineup. Following that, we have the 3 Mathematician, because Mathematician gets us any Shaddoll into our grave that we want, and can essentially get us any effect that we want. So, of course, we have to run the 3 Mathematician, just so we have that ability to do so. Next up, we have 2 Effect Veiler, because Veiler is ridiculous this format. Being able to stop things like Manju or Trishula, or even something like a Clyfort Disc is also pretty dang powerful, and just even better, that Effect Veiler cannot be, well, it can be chained to, but it isn't as easily stopped as other things like Breakthrough Skill and whatnot. So that's why, in my opinion, Veiler is just so good, and that any deck that has space to run Veiler should run Veiler. So I do run the 2 Veiler in this deck just to give me the edge over the Necroz matchup. Next up, we have 4 Power 1 of monsters, I guess you could say, to round off the monster lineup. We have the 1 Thunder King Ryo, because it's a walking Mistake, and I have been hearing that Mistake does pretty much wreck Necroz. So why wouldn't we want to run something that just single-handedly wrecks Necroz after all? So we do have the 1 Ryo for that. Next up, we do have 1 Dark Armed Dragon. Even though I do not run Eclipse in this deck to search out our Dark Armed Dragon, I like to have the 1 Dark Armed Dragon in here because we will be drawing into our cards a lot more often with the Star Seraph engine. So I decided to put Dark Arm in here just to act as another sort of boss monster within this deck, as well as I also finally got it in ulti, which is pretty cool because I pulled it out of a turbo pack. So I mean, like, hell, I got an ulti Dark Arm, so I'm dang gonna run it, if you know what I mean, guys. So yeah, I do have the 1 Dark Armed in here. Next, we have the 1 Archlord Christia. Now, my friend was the one who told me to try out Christia within this deck, and I will say that I'm very over the fence with this pick, as Christia can be a fairly bad dead draw at times, but due to the fact that Christia is a light, and you can use Christia as your light fodder for your Nephilim plays, coupling Christia with the amount of monster revival that we do now run within this deck just to make the Star Seraph engine consistent, there are times when you can actually summon Christia instead, and Christia in this deck acts as a sort of gin lock of our own, which is pretty darn hilarious when your opponent just doesn't know what to do under a Christia, and then you figure out that's how it feels whenever a Necros player gin locks someone, which is also pretty hilarious in my opinion. So we do have the one Christia in this deck. Honestly, I would probably bump it up to multiple copies because one, really, in my opinion, is not enough. But again, this is a very preliminary list. This is a very early list, I guess I could say. So I will be editing this number by next week's episode. So we do have the one Christia for now, though. And then finally, we have, of course, the one Blackluster Soldier because BLS is redonkulous, so we should run BLS. So that is it for the last monsters. Moving on to these spells, we start off with the triple El Shaddolls fusion, and then we have the double Shaddolls fusion. Honestly, I have been missing the third Shaddolls fusion just because sometimes I feel like I don't see my fusions early enough or often enough. And I really have been missing that third Shaddolls fusion at times. But really, in all honesty, I can understand this number that is currently, like, I guess you could say the standard within Shaddolls, as Shaddolls Fusion can be really, really bad sometimes against Necros, and again, because that is the deck to beat this format, you really don't want to make your matchup against it any worse than you have to. So, again, I just followed the trend and I kind of cut Shaddolls Fusion to 2. Although, coupling this with only one Shaddolls Hedgehog, it feels really, really bad sometimes when I just do not see a fusion. So, probably in the coming list, I will be bumping either Shaddolls Fusion up to 3, or at the very least, bumping up Hedgehog to 2, just so I can have that ability to search out my fusions just that much quicker. But for now, I guess you could say this list works to an extent. It isn't as optimal as I'd personally like it to be, but it does work. So, this is the fusion lineup that I do run. Next, we have 3 powerful one-off spells. We have the one Raigeki, the one Book, and the one Soul Charge. Raigeki and Book are really self-explanatory. They're very good staples, and we should basically run them in almost everything. And Soul Charge is, well, it's just another monster revival outlet that we can have to get our Star Seraphs and or our Christia back. So just allowing us to combo off of just one Soul Charge is also pretty nice. So that is it for these spells. Moving on to the traps, we have the 2 Sinister Shadow Games. This card is the thing that will make our face-down Shaddolls very much more reactive to our opponent. And it also helps us deck thin through our deck by sending Shaddolls too, which is also pretty nice. And in my opinion, Sinister Shadow Games is just really, really good, just due to the fact that it just does so many things for just one trap card. So we do have 2. 3 is a little bit too much in my opinion, because since we only do run 10 Shaddolls, there are times when you'll be finding yourself running out quite quickly. So we don't want to just burn ourselves out of resources just really, really fast with too many Sinister Shadow Games, if you know what I mean. So we do only run 2. Next up, we have the one Shadow Core, because this helps us recycle our Shadow spells whenever our Nephilim or our El Shadow monsters might get spun back to our extra or banished or something weird. So we do have the core to help us recycle our stuff back. Then we have the triple Call of the Haunted. Call of the Haunted is here because it helps us gain our consistency with our Star Seraph engine, as well as it can get back cool stuff like I should say this card right here, as well as stuff like our Christia or our Scepters. So again, Call of the Haunted, in my opinion, is a very important staple at 3 in any Star Seraph Shaddolls deck now, and I am very much loving this trap card in this deck. Finally, for the last trap, we have the embarrassingly one single mistake. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of embarrassing why I just put this in here. Really, I just threw the mistake in because I could not find a 40th card for this deck, so I just put mistake in as a fill-in. And I just thought of it because it's an auto-win card against Necros, guys. Really, why would you not want to try and run something that auto-wins against Necros? So I just threw it in really just as the 40th card, and I'm not going to complain that it does put in a lot of work. So I'm still happy that I have the one mistake, although I really would want to renegade it to the side deck. Just having at least, like, I guess you could say 1 in the main deck is also pretty hilarious at times when you flip it on a Necros player game 1. So that's also pretty cool. So that is the one that will round off our main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we start off with of course, the obligatory triple El Shaddolls Nephilim, because Nephilim is the best one. Nephilim is the one we'll be going into the most often, so we have to run her at 3. Moving on, we have the 2 Winda, because Winda can help us slow down our opponent quite a bit, and Satellarknights do not love this card at all. So we do have the 2 Winda. Finally, for the last two El Shaddolls, we have the two Shekinaga because Shekinaga puts in a ton of work during the Necros matchup. So we should run two just so we have access to her as much as we possibly can. So that is it for the fusions. Moving on to the synchros, we have the one Leo because we will be making Leo off of our Nephilim and our Falco quite often because of our Sinister Shadow games and whatnot. So we do have the one Leo. Then we go on to the one Yazi because I'm currently testing this over Arcanite Magician to see how much I would miss the destruction effect of Arcanite. And really, Yazi is pretty darn decent in our level 7 synchro slot as he can be a pretty darn big stick, which is something Arcanite could never do. And in all honesty, I feel that Yazi is probably better in my honest opinion, due to the fact that since we do run 3 Beast and 3 Falco, we will be making level 7 synchros more often than we might expect. So there are times when I'd rather just have a big stick rather than just something that can pop 2 cards. So I do very much like the Yazi currently, and that's what I am running. Then for the last 2 synchros, we have the pretty darn standard level 6 and level 5. We have the Armades and the one Goyo, because these are probably the best at their level class within their synchros, and really they're really good, so that's why I run them as our last 2. So that is it for the synchros. Moving on to the XYZs, we have our two XYZs that we go in through our Star Seraphs. We have the one Deltaros and the one Ouroboros. Really, these are probably the best things to go into from your Star Seraph, so I mean, if they're the best, why would you not run the best? So we do have these 2 guys. Then, for our last 2 XYZs, we have the one Castellan, the one E-Knight, because obviously these guys are generic staple rank 4s that are just really powerful. So we do run them. So that is it for the extra deck. Moving on to the side deck. We start off with the Triple Max C. I should say this, that the side deck really hasn't changed all too much since the last time you guys saw it, but there are some changes. So we do have the 3 Max C because, well, Max C is really good against Rogue and whatnot, so we do have it sided. Next up, we have the Triple Lancia for the Infernoid Hero and Necros matchup. And Lancia does put in quite a bit of work against Necros and Heroes because Lancia can be used either as an offensive or defensive card, either to stop your opponent's plays or elongate your own. So that's also pretty darn cool. So we do have the 3 Lancia in the sideboard. Next up, going on to the spells that we do run in the sideboard, we have Triple MST because we don't main them, so we should run them at least somewhere in the deck, just so we have that easy spelling trap removal. So we do have the 3 in the side deck. Moving on, we have the 2 Dark Hole. This is extra Jin outs that we want to side in during the Necros matchup, just in case we feel like we're getting locked down a little bit too much. So we do have the 2 Dark Hole just to serve as more Jin outs. Then for the final spell that we do run, I do run the 3rd Shadow Fusion in the side deck, just in case I play a deck like Burning Abyss or Satellar Knight, where they heavily rely on their extra deck. So I know I can abuse Fusion just a bit more against those decks. So that's why I do side in the 3rd copy. Moving on to the traps, we go into the double Mirror Force, because this will blow out Qliforts, this will blow out Yosenjus, this will blow out a lot of decks that can swarm the field pretty darn quick. So we do have the 2 Mirror Force just to act as a defensive trap for us. And then finally, for the last trap we do run in the sideboard, I do side in Crush Card Virus. I still feel like it's not good enough of a card to be warranted in the main deck, because in my opinion, there still are quite a few decks within this meta that actually benefit off of Crush Card more than they get hurt by it. This card really is only going to get sided in against things like Heroes or Necros or possibly Qlifort. Yeah, probably Qlifort too. Everything else, though, in my opinion, it's really bad, in my opinion. Like, if you play Shaddolls, BA, or even Satellar Knights to an extent, Crush Card gets really bad at times. So I don't want to mainboard it and commit a mainboarded slot to it. So I do like it in the side deck. Alright, guys. Well, that is it for episode 2 of Path to Perfection. I hope you did enjoy, and again, remember that this series is a series for all of you guys, and for you guys to just have an open discussion about my choices and picks, and so we can all come together and talk about the deck. So if you have anything to say about this deck, any questions, comments, and or concerns, always feel free to leave it down in the comment section below, as I do check the comments very often, and I will be more than happy to always reply to any people with ideas and or thoughts on the deck. So again, make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and as always, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace.